Yo, what is up, guys? Welcome back to another awesome video. Today we're gonna react to the fascist card. Why does the left label opponents as fascists? So we're just gonna do a reaction. Remember, let's not try to get too political. I'm personally conservative and Christian. I'm also a good old American patriot and German, so German American. But nah, like I got also see every side of the political aisle or whatever. I really don't care. I'm just here to see why, because I noticed this a lot. And with the good help of Lavader. Let's react.
This video has been brought to you by the
Look, I'm on here. Hey, I'm on here. I don't know if you can see it through like my cam. Let me fix it. Hey.
generous channel members and lads over at Patreon. Thank you
All
all
right.
for supporting me
That's
and
amazing.
my content.
I also want to apologize. There's a bit of a volume problem now that we have the webcam. It's just a lot of like, it just got more complicated. So, unfortunately, I have to stay a little distant from the video, and I'll have to move a little. And also, you might hear a bit of an echo, so I apologize. I'll try and get it fixed soon.
Being an individual who has actively engaged in discussing a political and historical discourse long before my YouTube era, I have had the opportunity to encounter and engage in conversations with numerous individuals who align themselves with a diverse range of political ideologies. In the process, I have come across intriguing and varied interpretations of historical events and conflicts that have piqued my curiosity and enriched my understanding of the world around us. Since I identify myself as right-wing, I have obviously had many
Let's go, National Conservatism. Just saying it's a pretty good side to choose, because guess what? One, we believe that our country can do amazing things, we just gotta put in the effort. And then two, conservatism I believe is a good idea because it's the closest one where we can get to God and He will lead us through. That's why I've always proposed like a limited government. I don't want the government becoming super powerful. I hate dictatorships. It's evil. But I do think that you shouldn't have a government too weak. I'm kind of like how conservatives are like. They're kind of moderates usually. They just kind of they have to get closer to some kind of religion, the Lord, some standard. That's what conservatives need to do. If you are not religious and you identify as conservative, I'm sorry, but that's gonna be a lot harder to do.
clashes with those that identify as left-wing and progressive. And if you have ever engaged with these people as much as I have, you would have more than likely been called the infamous F word by them: fascist. This strategy by the left to label everyone on the right as a fascist and Nazi is not uncommon. Actually, it is extremely prevalent among these people, and many famous left-wing content creators on YouTube do love using the F word.
Bro, Asanabi. This guy's a loser. This guy's like a loser. I'm sorry. This guy's an idiot. Have you seen some of the dumbest stuff he's ever said? By the way, they advocate for socialism, yet Hitler was socialist. What? What? The fascists were also socialists because they believed in powerful, big, strong government. Socialism just means let the government do all your stuff. That's socialism. You need the government to enforce the economy. What did Hitler do? He got the government to enforce the economy. Now, they'll probably disagree on how to distribute wealth, but I'll have to look, I'll have to look it up. Do more research in the future how Hitler, gave the money and wealth. I don't know if he, like, split it equally between everyone, seeing how he was also far right. But I'm just saying, they all agree on socialism. So,
A lot when discussing their opponents. And the further left you go, towards the more radical sides like communism, you will see that their followers are even more trigger happy with that term. I myself have seen so many communists unironically calling social democrats and even liberals as fascists or simply fascists in disguise. Of course, anyone who is even a little bit mature in political discourse can see how ludicrous it is to go around and label everyone who disagrees with you a fascist.
also, I do think that is like, it kind of makes it look like, oh, everything's fascist, everything's evil. That kind of devalues the term. Fascism should only be used for terms that are like when someone's actually doing bad. If you just go around saying it, then you kind of ruin the whole meaning. There's no point in saying it anymore. Because then, if everyone's fascist, everyone who disagrees with you is fascist, then, well, what's the point? What does the term even mean anymore? Just saying, like, you kind of are doing a very negative effect when you're just name calling. In debates, I will most of the time not name call. But when I'm angry, I can be an idiot. I'll just like, no, no, this. Which I shouldn't even be doing that. I sound like a dog. You gotta be calm, collected, and professional. You don't just be like, oh, you're a fascist.
But despite it being so obvious, the question comes up. Why exactly is the strategy so popular? What exactly makes it so effective? And why is the left so keen on preserving it? These are the questions I hope to answer today. Why does the left love calling everyone on the right fascist so much? And the answer to this may not be as straightforward as one may think. Every human being on planet Earth has their own opinions and is entitled to them.
Oh yeah, my opinion on Trump, bro, he's the complete opposite of a fascist. Fascism is all about like powerful government and government strength. That's the whole point of fascism, where you kind of just have that one party system, no other kind of opposition. That's fascism. Trump is libertarian, not liberal. Well, traditional liberal, I guess. He's all about less government, only enforcing on certain things. That's kind of what he does, right? He's all about make America great again, but he's also a populist. He's against the establishment. He's that kind of just guy who's gonna go out and do his thing, right? That's kind of Trump. I don't think he's really that authoritarian. If you were to take a political test with him, I would. I'm just gonna guess it. I'm not 100% sure on all of his politics. I'm not that informed on Trump, but based off the policies I noticed, it most likely would be more in right winging libertarian, not far right winging. There's a difference.
And more importantly, humans should have the right to talk about their opinions openly. And this is the beauty of freedom of speech. You have the full right to express your opinions and try to convince people why your opinion is correct.
Let's go. He understands, and he lives in Bosnia and Herzegovina or Germany, like one of the two. It says on his about page that he's from Germany, but he also identifies as someone from Bosnia. I'm just gonna assume somewhere around there. I don't know. Maybe let's just say Austria. We're just gonna say he lives in Austria. I don't know why. It's like in between the two. Either that or like Slovenia. Anyways, back to the point. So he understands a lot to do with freedom of speech, and I think that's kind of what freedom of speech is all about. You're giving a reason why you're this or you're feeling that. That's kind of the idea. He lives in a country where they don't really have that much freedom of speech. I wish he had the same amount in these countries. I wish these countries had the same amount of freedom as someone like me in America. Like, I am probably in the most privileged country in the entire world. I'm like just a kid, and I have more access to resources than he probably would. Like, it just feels so unfair. But he played his card really well. And that's why I respect people from other countries who don't just complain and want more government handouts. He's willing to put the effort into making such high quality content. You know, I'm just a kid. I don't know anything really. I'm learning, and I hope he can educate me. If he ever watches this, sorry, if he ever watches this, if I would just say thank you. You're gonna help me learn a lot more.
The upside of freedom of speech is not only that people can say what they want without consequences, but also that it will lead to certain ideas being understood more. Let's say, for example, you have your own show where you push a certain narrative and idea, like that all
Also, based. I would clap, but I'm trying to hold the microphone. There. Hey, like Ben Shapiro. I love Ben Shapiro. Even when he's like wrong sometimes, I just find him funny. You know, he'll be wrong a lot, but he's most of the time right.
French people eat frogs, and you make several points about your narrative and back it up with evidence. And then someone else comes along on another show and challenges your idea, saying how French people don't eat frogs, and that person brings their own evidence. And then you,
Hypothetically speaking, folks, I can't do the Ben Shapiro impression. Hypothetically, folks, if French people were to eat frogs, it would create extradition of the esophagus and create the esophagus to explode, which means he cannot eat frogs. Okay, folks. Okay, folks.
the listener of both shows, come to your own conclusion after hearing both sides of the argument. Do French people eat frogs or do they not? That is up for you to decide. And for the sake of argument, let's say you adopt the idea that French people don't eat frogs, and then you start developing your own ideas and arguments, even perhaps coming across new evidence that proves your point. And then you start spreading your thoughts around, and thus you are contributing to this discussion. And the same thing can be applied to people who do believe French people eat frogs. But one thing is for certain, you will in the end understand the topic better. By going back and forth with debates, discussions, writing books, those involved with this topic will tend to understand it more by listening to both sides of the argument, and while it can sometimes convince people to switch sides, sometimes it can even lead to people finding flaws and pointing them out. With every
And that's why I love debating with people. I debate with my family all the time. To be honest, I want to go as controversial as possible. You know, like the trans or abortion sometimes, but like other times, it's just like I don't really want to. I back out, and then I talk about like economics, which is a little less controversial. And yeah, I think it's good to learn a lot more. But I do want to have conversations about tough stuff. I do want to kind of wait and let it develop more and maybe not debate with my family about that. It's kind of like, really?
point a new argument brought up, it opens the possibility for the opposing side to make a response to it and come up with their own argument against it.
Trying to,
Or at least that
I'm trying to like, it's really hard to do with this. It's kind of heavy. But yeah, I do get what he's saying. Bro, this guy, like, he's from another country. He knows literally more than like 80% of Americans on this stuff. You know, take out the kids. Take out people under 18. He knows more than like people around his age even. I don't know how old he is. I think he's like 18 to 20. But like people around his age in America, like only maybe 10% know the same stuff as he does. You know, he knows more about democracy in a country where there is barely any democracy than like America, where we're one of the most free countries on earth. And don't try and take me wrong here about like what I'm saying. Don't take it out of context. Probably there's a lot of freedom in wherever he's in. Germany has a lot of freedom, just nowhere as much as America. That's just kind of a fact. You can kind of look at the comparisons between them. But Germany does have certain amounts of stuff that they can be a little more free than other parts, but most of the time America is way more free than Germany. And then if you're just looking at Bosnia, there's like really no debate there. Bosnia has completely less freedom. Yeah, I don't want to say the full name. I'm just calling it Bosnia.
That's how it should be working. Because now, let's go back to my example. You have a show where you push the narrative that French people eat frogs, but suddenly there is no other side to the argument. It either does not exist or the one who is making it is so irrelevant and is not allowed to push it to the broader public like you are. Yeah, that is where the problem starts. With there practically being no real other side to the argument, people will generally only hear that one side of it and nothing else. However, with this
These people are idiots. I gotta be honest. I'm sorry I'm pausing it so much. I mean, I'm pausing. But yeah, these people are kind of idiots. They're just screaming, they're showing white supremacy. Meanwhile, the government is putting more and more power within themselves. They're trying to expand a bit, while people are trying to split themselves. The left is just being stupid. You know, these people, they don't even represent real Democrats. Like, my mother's a Democrat. She would never advocate for something as stupid as this. She makes, these people make the Democrats look bad, you know? The Democrats aren't horrible people, not all of them. But a huge amount of them are becoming worse and worse, which is really disappointing. And then, also the Republicans are horrible, but that's another discussion.
addition of there not being any real opposition to the idea, people can start manipulating it by spreading outright lies and saying that the other side believes in things they actually don't. But since there is no real or open opposition about it from the other side, this narrative will get accepted. And we have seen this plenty of times in totalitarian systems throughout history, censoring and banning the thoughts and ideas of anything they deem to oppose their own narrative, and making sure that the people do not learn about them, but rather just focus on their own ideologies. But then,
Yeah, that actually reminds me of a verse in the Bible. I don't know exactly. Maybe in the editing I'll show it, where it is, but basically it says that we don't try and censor others. What we have to do as Christians is to be prepared to defend ourselves. That way we can be able to back ourselves much better and be able to, basically put a good defense so we can kind of reinforce our beliefs within ourselves. So that's why, I believe God definitely loves the idea of free speech and the idea of, having the freedom to say stuff. He's obviously, whatever God says we have to do, right? But he will allow us to make some choices. I mean, he made Adam and Eve have those choices. That was their own decision. And yet he still also continued many. Made many continue making their own decisions. And when Jesus died for our sins, that's our decision now. So he gave us the ability to make these decisions. Let's choose the right path. Now, I don't want to push my own Christian beliefs, but this is just my own personal opinion and my own beliefs.
and there are times where the idea isn't directly banned, but it is heavily suppressed. And I could not give a better example of this than the infamous Red Scare in the United States. The Red Scare, also sometimes called McCarthyism after US Senator Joseph McCarthy, who was spearheading this idea, advocated the idea that communism was an evil force that had infiltrated the United States, how communism was going to ruin America and kill everyone, how being communist was anti-American, and so on. Classic propaganda tactics. Now, despite myself being anti-communist, I have to admit that the Red Scare really did nothing positively. Worst of all, the term communist in the US at the time was more used as a slander tool than an actual identification of someone belonging to the communist ideology. US politicians would very commonly label critics, journalists, and anyone else a communist, and considering the reputation communism had, it had the possibility of ruining someone's career. If you would ask a normal American teenager around that time period about communism, they would always say that communism is bad, communism is evil. But how many of them would actually give you a proper definition on what communism actually was or why it was evil?
Facts. I won't agree with everything he says, but I think this is probably one of his greatest points in this video because of the Red Scare and how people kind of used it as an excuse. They didn't really have any good points against it, and that led to communists being able to infiltrate our schools and college and be able to change the opinions of people. Look at it today. The Red Scare did absolutely nothing. It probably even made it worse. If we were able to have good conversation and, do our thing with all one another, right? Probably fascism, sorry, not fascism, probably communism would not have been as popular as today. That's just kind of how I see it. People got to be better prepared. And you don't just let people just be like, oh, communist. What's a communist? I don't know. They're just communist because you made me mad. We got to be able to identify and do things correct. I might be anti-communist, but I will respect people's opinions still. If you do believe in, sharing everyone equally the money and whatever, distributing the wealth properly, then whatever. I'm fine with it. That's your opinion. And by the way, if anyone, accuses me of just picking one side, I actually had the Communist Manifesto with me. I can show you later. Hold on. I'm reading it so I can learn more and actually know the term, the definition, the real thing. I want to learn. I don't want to, hide and not know anything. I don't want to be just some kind of like puppet to the right or left. I used to actually be like that. I'll explain another time, maybe later in the video, but I was kind of like a puppet to it all.
Truth be told, the vast majority of Americans, despite knowing and seeing communism as bad, they could never properly identify or define it, because the Red Scare made sure to be as vague about communism as possible, and as said, completely made stuff up with just a little bit of truth sprinkled in there. The Communist Party of the United States, however, was not banned and they were still accepting memberships. But due to the political climate, they were barred from entering anything mainstream or even giving them a platform to speak from. Despite their technically being in opposition, they had practically no voice, being suppressed at every turn, and Americans were being told to stay away from them and not fall for their communist lies. Obviously today in America, the Red Scare is over. People are more quote-unquote informed about communism than ever, and so it managed to relatively die down. But this is what I was talking about. Because there was practically no opposition from actual communists in the United States and abroad, Senator McCarthy and other US politicians changed the meaning of what it meant to be a communist at their own will. And since their voice was the dominant and only one, people were buying into everything they said and believed it. By being the only voice without opposition, one could define communism as really whatever they wanted. So why am I exactly talking about this? What is my point? Well, if you take everything about the Red Scare / McCarthyism and change the word communism into fascism, you will start noticing how things are getting a little too similar. It's almost like the left adopted the ideas of McCarthyism and made their own version of it by directing it towards the right. Now, am I trying to defend fascism with this? Of course not. Being a monarchist, I have my fair share of disagreements and criticisms of fascist doctrine, but this is no real way to learn about ideologies. If you want to learn about fascism and what fascists actually believe in, then go pick up a book from fascist thinkers and start reading and making your own conclusions, and then apply your own worldview to it and criticize it. But that is exactly the issue. The left isn't even properly criticizing fascist thought. When they say they are criticizing fascism, what they truly mean is they don't like Trump or any group that's just a bit to the right of the Mensheviks. I have yet to see, for example, any kind of leftist breaking down Giovanni Gentile's essays on fascism and go over each chapter, properly understanding what he is trying to say and properly applying criticism to it. But obviously that is too much work. My point is, by taking the term fascist, the left is able to twist and change the meaning of fascism to whatever they want, thanks to the fact that the opposition doesn't even exist or is never heard, and the average Joe will most likely never even question it. They themselves don't even know or can properly define what fascism is, and in true Red Scare fashion, instead use it as a giant slander tool to bring down their opponents without engaging in an actual debate. But what exactly makes this approach so effective? We'll get back to the video in just a second. Let's hear from today's sponsor, Atlas VPN.
The hidden enemy.
If we look at the state of politics in the vast majority of countries, specifically the West, we will see that fascism is practically a dead ideology. When I say that, I don't mean that they do not exist. There are still many organizations and groups that identify as fascist, and undoubtedly, there are many people who believe in it. But what I mean is that fascism has no actual political power and has barely, if any, influence in any government of a developed nation. This has not, however, stopped leftists from calling many mainstream right-wing parties and figures as fascist, like Donald Trump and the Republican Party, the AfD in Germany, Marine Le Pen, and the list goes on. Think of pretty much...
AfD is corrupt. I'm just gonna say AfD is a corrupt political party. I think AfD makes a huge amount of mistakes, and they're not really. I wouldn't say they're conservative, but I will think that they are like the Republicans. They're kind of just right winging, but they don't have that God and sense in them. They don't have any real religious values. And I think religious values are the thing that's going to help them, whether it's Christianity or Hinduism, whichever one. If the is corrupt, the Republicans are cowards, and then who's this again?
The AfD in Germany, Marine Le Pen, and the list goes on.
I'm not sure who that is, but yeah, whatever. I don't know what to say about her. And then for AfD, and which is the German party, yeah, they're corrupt, just like every other party. They're all corrupt.
Think of pretty much any public right-wing figure, and I can tell you that they had definitely been called fascists once or twice. Since the definition of fascism has been completely distorted...
Are they fascist? No, not even close. Not even close. But are they right-winging? Yes. Right-wing is not fascism, just like how left-leaning is not communism. No left-leaning person who's like moderate, no moderate left-leaning person, which is basically like AfD or Donald Trump, right-wing or just alt-right. Just like the alt-left or, left-leaning normal person, they're not going to advocate for something like getting rid of all the, land buyouts in America or getting rid of companies because they use companies. The crazy people are going to be like, destroy Amazon! Wait, let me get my Starbucks! I love billion-dollar corporations! Now burn them to the ground!
to be nothing more than a slander term, it's very easy to label them all as fascist the moment there is even a shred of quote-unquote similarity between them. Like, for example, standing on a balcony. The reason why this strategy is so effective is standing on a balcony.
Wait, what? Okay, this has got to be like, this is a troll. This is a troll. There's no way. Did people really try to call Donald Trump fascist just because of how he stood? Wait, I don't know if the camera will like see my face. I'm standing. I'm too tall.
The reason why this strategy is so effective is because it plays with the anxieties of people, saying how there is a hidden enemy among them and how fascism is about to jump out at any second and take over. Everyone knows that fascism is bad, and when you start saying that Trump is a fascist, they will start thinking that Trump is gonna do something on the scale of Adolf Hitler. I would say there are 5 big reasons why this strategy of an unseen enemy lurking in the shadows is efficient to fool people. Number 1, primal fear and survival instincts. Humans have evolved to be highly sensitive to threats, especially those that are not easily identifiable or tangible. This primal fear and survival instinct can be easily triggered by the idea of an unseen enemy lurking among the population.
I don't believe in evolution, but even then, when you look at how God created people, they do have very, very similar instincts.
In this case, the notion of fascists lurking among us tapped into the
But they aren't like doing that. They're just kind of being a little more civilized because God was supposed to lead them, and then they betrayed the Lord. Take like Tower of Babel, for example.
This instinctual fear, making people more susceptible to accept the idea without demanding concrete evidence. Number 2, confirmation bias and groupthink. Once fears are stoked, people tend to interpret ambiguous information in a way that confirms their pre-existing beliefs. This is known as confirmation bias. In this context, those who were already predisposed to believing in the existence of fascists in the government were more likely to interpret any suspicious behavior or association as evidence. Additionally, the fear-driven environment encouraged groupthink, where individuals were more inclined to adopt the prevailing beliefs of the larger society, reinforcing their idea further. Number 3, cognitive dissonance and simplification. This has created a cognitive dissonance, a state of psychological discomfort arising from holding contradictory beliefs or ideas. To alleviate this discomfort, people might simplify complex situations and accept black and white explanations, such as the notion that anyone with right-wing or nationalist views must be a fascist. Simplification allowed people to make sense of a complex world and reinforce the beliefs in the widespread presence of fascism today. Number 4, influence of authority figures. Political leaders and other authority figures can play a crucial role in shaping public opinion around these issues.
Yeah, but is anyone really looking to Joe Biden for advice? Not really the best example. You just see Joe Biden like, that's just kind of Joe Biden there. No, I don't think Joe Biden's like maybe not the worst president, but probably top 5 worst. Then he just also I don't really think that's working that well because like look at how it is. The USA is still nowhere near as left leaning as Europe. Throughout the past few decades, or maybe not even a few decades, just past few years, there's been a very, very tough right-winging push in America. The reason why is because America's always kind of had that, like, ever since the 1940s, it's kind of went more and more left, and people are okay with it. The first time, yeah, that was completely fine, and then it got more and more and more, and now it's kind of another flip, right? A new stage will come in. So America's never really been, purely left-leaning or purely right-winging. It's just been filled with a bunch of people, and they kind of have their own distinct opinions. And I looked at how it is statistically. Most people, like, they're nowhere near something like Europe, for example, where Europe's a lot more left-leaning, and most people are socially left-leaning. It's very different in somewhere like the United States, where most people are, against a lot of some of the crazy stuff that Europe or Canada has proposed.
Whether it be a prominent YouTuber, real-life activist, politician, or organization, when such claims come from authoritative sources, people may be more inclined to accept them without questioning, especially if doing so aligns with their existing fears and biases. And finally, number 5, social and peer pressure. The fear of being labeled as a fascist sympathizer or soft on fascism can contribute to social pressure to conform. People may be afraid of these consequences of being seen as insufficiently committed to the cause of rooting out fascism, which leads them to buy into this narrative to demonstrate their loyalty and avoid suspicion. For example, in Austria, just being under suspicion of having Nazi sympathies can lead to your life getting ruined and fired from your job, and a normal man obviously does not want to risk that. In my personal opinion, I believe the 5th reason, social and peer pressure, is the biggest reason why people are adopting this narrative. With this, I would like to introduce you all to Solomon Asch, a psychologist who pioneered social psychology. During his lifetime, he had run a few interesting experiments called the Asch conformity experiments. This is how the experiments went. There would be 10 participants. One participant would be a genuine one, while the other 9 participants were fake ones, decoys intentionally planted for the sake of the experiment. And their task would be a very simple one. They were presented with three lines, and they all had to decide together on which line was the longest. Simple enough, right? But here is where it gets interesting. Those 9 fake participants would intentionally agree that, for example, line C is the longest instead of the obvious line B. And Ash would discover that the one genuine participant would agree with the group 40 to 50% of the time, despite it being plainly obvious that the other line was the longest one. Up to 75% of participants conform to an obvious lie at least once. This is because of social pressure. If 9 people are telling you X is true and not Y, despite Y being very clearly the correct.
I'm also like that a lot where I'm not really like gonna agree, but I do try and see their point when it's like maybe 2 or more people that are not really fully agreeing with me. And then when it's just one person, I just try to get to their level, and I slowly kind of explain my point of view in a way where it doesn't really come out as, oh, this is stupid, this is why, stuff like that. I just be like, well, I don't really agree on this. I do understand your point of view, but the reason why I don't agree on this is because of this. That's kind of how I am. Also, what I was trying to say before, I was kind of like that, where I was shaped around kind of the where I was around kind of formed some of my opinions. Now, to be fair, I was like, what, 10, 12? I used to be like, oh, isn't Europe like socialist? I used to think Europe was socialist. I mean, yeah, basically kind of is. But remember, this is like many years before. And I was just like, oh, there's communism, and then capitalism, and then socialism, like, in between. Which, no, not even close to true, but, like, that's kind of how I thought. And then, I don't know how I thought about social politics. I was 12 or something, like, maybe 11. But, yeah, that's kind of how I thought economically. And I was like, socialism can be good, because then it's not capitalism. Like, I was taught that capitalism wasn't really a good system, which in my opinion, when I look today, it's not the best, but it's no, like, socialism in my opinion is a lot worse. That's just kind of how, like, I was shaped, and then I did research and I kind of created my own opinions. I came from an NPC at 11 all the way to a 15-year-old who's very, very knowledgeable for the age. But I still have like another 3, 4, maybe 5 years to learn. And then even then, 20 is very, very young. So I still have a long time before I become better at this stuff.
Correct answer, people will cave to them and accept that X is true. Even Ash himself would point out how worrying the results were. Quote, the fact that intelligent, well-meaning young people are willing to call white black is a matter of concern. How does this apply to our topic? If you are active in areas that have a very leftist leaning and people you interact with share these same values, you are expected to adopt this narrative as well in order to not seem like an out.
I got a question. How come all of them are like, they look the same? They look the same. The majority of them also look white, which is kind of strange because this is like stuff like Antifa and all of that. It's an anti-fascist movement. I think it's in like German or French. Oh, okay. I thought it was in the United States. But even then, like, they're all wearing hoodies and wearing masks. Well, they're wearing masks. What year was this picture taken? If it was in 2022, then we're done. Oh, 2021, okay. Still a little stupid, but whatever. It's like trans or whatever. These people look exactly the same. That's gonna be everyone one day. I predict it. Or at least a huge amount of people will just look the exact same. They'll all, in the right winging too, they'll all just wear like, American flags, and they'll all be just wearing all red, white, and blue. And they'll be like, this is bad. America good. Always good. And then the left-leaning people are all gonna wear like, they're gonna still wear masks in 2026. And they're still gonna think COVID's a threat. And then they're gonna wear like all these hoodies and masks and all in black, and they're just gonna be like, "This is bad. Fascism bad. Fascism bad. Take down Trump." Who knows? If Trump wins the election, I have no idea. They all look the same, right and left.
Outsider. And even if you might disagree with this notion in the beginning and just parrot it without actually meaning it, over time you will come to genuinely believe in it because the environment around you demands it. You don't even know yourself what actually makes Trump a Nazi, but because everyone around you and in your social circle says it, you start believing it without question. And this isn't just limited to either being accepted, but also because of the fear of the possible repercussions of what might happen if they find out that you don't actually believe in these things. Let me give you a recent example of the drama that happened with Vicky in 1999. Well, the first one before the whole grooming allegations. Discord server chats were leaked where Vicky was seen saying some unfavorable things towards Palestinians and supposedly standing in support of Israel. And then this basically started a whole public lynching of Vicky because people thought that she supported Israel instead of Palestine. It works like a hive mind. The moment you have your own opinions on a matter, like for example saying that not all right-wingers are fascists, you can expect that all the ties and reputation you built up can be ruined in an instant because of it. And no wonder that people can be fearful of saying what they truly think and just continue parroting the same narrative. Observing many prominent radical ideologies and political movements that have risen to power over the years, specifically in the 20th century, we will see that one of the central components and programs by these movements was the elimination of a boogeyman. Whether it was the Jews for the Nazis or the filthy capitalists for the communists, one narrative was always clear. We,
It was an scapegoat.
the good guys who want to help you, versus them, the bad guys who want to hurt you. Undoubtedly, this us versus them narrative doesn't just exist within radical ideologies.
You know what else it reminds me of? Star Wars. Rebels, good. Soldiers, bad. Empire, bad. We are the good guys. They are the bad guys. We're always good. Our intentions are always good. Their intentions are always bad. They're always bad. I want to write down something, right? And it'll be basically just say, blank is good, blank is bad. And then you can do it with anything. Watch. Right wing is good, left wing is bad. Left wing is good, right winging is bad. You simplified it. Good job. Wait, what? Let's hear what they have to say. No, we don't want to hear it anymore. No. It's so stupid. I don't care what political party you are. If you're like something like my opinions, you're Christian, you just refuse to hear other opinions and, make that type of idea. If you have that type of ideology where it's just like, this is good, this is bad, simplification, then you need help. Like, you need to actually try and listen to other people and then make your own opinions. God, it literally says in the Bible, we got to be able to defend ourselves well. If you can't defend yourself, then I have no idea. I don't know what I'm gonna say. Just disappointing.
Even in normal right-wing and left-wing circles, and I don't think that is necessarily bad. The difference is that the further radical you go, whether right or left-wing, you will see that the solutions and what to do with these enemies become much more extreme, and their presence and influence is vastly more exaggerated.
Even
For
their friends.
propaganda reasons, it's extremely effective. While most political activists share their thoughts on how to improve the country, battle crime and so forth, they sell something that goes beyond all of that. That there is a group of people who are present and powerful and want to harm you. That they are the saviors the people can trust to break their chains and defeat this enemy. And this is exactly what a prominent organization is doing, Antifa. When Antifa was first established as a movement in the early 20th century, they had an actual understandable role to play. It was the age when fascism was on the rise in Europe, and the ideology has even started taking over entire countries. And
Wait, it originated in Germany? Or like what country did it? Oh, Soviet flag. Either therefore either this is like in Germany and before happened in Germany, or this is like, oh, it probably is Russian. That makes sense. So it's Russian and there's like communist flags. That would make more sense.
obviously, Antifa was there to combat their rise and raise awareness about fascism. Their entire purpose, as the name suggests, was to take a stand and fight fascism. But today, as I have explained, with fascism being a relatively dead ideology with no significant political power whatsoever, what is the point of them being around in the first place? And that's exactly the point. A movement whose entire existence is centered around standing against something rather than for something will never make it in the long term. And in order to keep their whole gist up, they had to resort to pretending that fascism is still very much a threat. Because what's a hero without a villain? That is why they resort to calling anything right-wing as fascist in order to give their organization.
No, I don't agree with that. In my personal opinion, like for Antifa, not the guy, Lavader, they could have done so many other things. Like, it doesn't have to just be anti-fascist. You could also go against people who want to do censorship in the proper way. Or you could just inform people about, different sides. They're anti-fascist. Why not promote, anti-fascism by, promoting stuff like idea of expression? Be somewhere where it's all about expressing ideas. Fascism, you could just go by the most basic ideas, or probably its best sides where it's just about one government party. Just make sure places are not on parties. Liberalism, basically, I guess. Like that would be a little more understandable. Now it's just basically calling everyone fascist for no reason. No real understanding, no real consistency. They could have done other stuff. Rebranding could have worked. I feel like they could have done many other things, but they had to take that route.
A reason to still exist, pretending and saying that fascism is on the rise and that fascists are everywhere. And leftists accepted Antifa with open arms because they are aware how much they can use them as a propaganda tool. And naturally, people going around and seeing graffiti like fascists out, kill Nazis, and generally seeing them marching the street might make them start believing that fascism is still very much around. We can actually see this in modern communists, for example. Communists believe that capitalism is the ultimate enemy that should be destroyed, and fascism to them is nothing more than a branch, a tentacle of this great demon. And yet they keep using the term fascist and not capitalist.
I also read the Communist Manifesto, at least like the first few pages. This already tells me everything. How Karl Marx point of view was and how communism is supposed to have in that point of view. Essentially, he was saying, ever since the medieval era, ever since all the way back, there was always that enslaved people, right? And then there was the, upper class. And then capitalism was always that thing around. It was always enslaving the working people. And there would be a fight to go against them. A glorious fight. A war of destroying these nations and becoming free nations. It was never intentionally in Russia. It was intentionally in places like, the UK or France or Germany. Industrialized nations. Not poor nations like Russia. Where it's like 3 people who were ruling everything. And then everyone else too. Like 100 million people enslaved. Or not enslaved. Just like in horrible conditions, basically. The working class. You can't really say that's really much of capitalism, because like what are the capitalists? Just like 3 dudes that are not even that don't even like capitalism, that just saying, like, it makes sense. I think it kind of makes sense.
Because let's be honest, Telling a random Jewish person that fascists are after you and your family is gonna sound much more threatening and serious than saying capitalists are after you. Having this boogeyman that is fascism and parading it around like it's coming to kill everyone is valuable to boost their numbers and have their members and believers in this fantasy land. Now more than ever, since Antifa and the radical left generally started getting more and more militant in the past few years, going on this witch hunt for an enemy that is no longer a legitimate threat. Using this approach by calling all their critics and anyone who identifies themselves on the right as fascists, leftists are able to slander them easily, and the tactic they are using is nothing new. While not as successful, they took the strategies and approach by Joseph McCarthy and the way he handled the Red Scare and applied it for their own benefit, just crossing out communism with fascism. Because there is almost non-existent opposition and pushback, they were able to manipulate the term fascism and shape it in any way they saw fit. Someone is against immigration, they're a fascist. They don't like leftist policies, fascist, and so on. By intentionally keeping the definition as vague and simple as possible, they are able to apply it to almost anything, and their followers will accept it without question. By manipulating people's fears of fascism and the horrors that came with it, they are subconsciously convincing people around them and their circles that fascism is on the rise and that it is a genuine, real threat to their lives. And these people, despite even themselves knowing that these things said are wrong, still cave in due to the social pressure and the surrounding that keeps telling them.
And yeah, I 100% agree. And sometimes I see that with like people I watch. I'm a big fan of Ben Shapiro, but I think the biggest problem I have with him is sometimes he's just like, not really, he shows his bias sometimes. When, like, I've seen a lot when he talks, he'll be like basically just saying something like, oh, the left started this. We didn't do anything until we called you out. Now, you call us fascists. Now, to be fair, like, sometimes that will happen a lot. But other times, he's not really going to call out when the right does something wrong, but I do really like how he will be critical of someone like Trump. If he disagrees with them, it doesn't matter that he's the same politics. He's going to disagree. And he's going to explain, and he's going to basically just talk with his mind. Pretty clever guy, and I think he does his research a lot. He will sometimes have his biased moments, but I think he's understandably, he gets his facts and research well. He does a lot of good research, and I want to become kind of like him, but with my own Christian ideals, kind of like, sort of with me, but I don't just try to use the Bible as a source. He doesn't do that, and I don't think I can do that unless it's like, we're going biblical. If we're talking about something like the economy, like, the Bible's not really gonna do it. And then people aren't going to listen to me if I'm going to go through social issues with the Bible. But hey, like, I do think the Bible is probably the most important thing we should do, because, like, Christianity, it's the best thing you can do, in my opinion, getting closer to God. Also, I do think I had, I kind of was with that whole far right at one point. It was a little dangerous. And then I kind of came back to conservatism. I remember I was like big fan of Andrew Tate. But Andrew Tate, he did a lot of horrible things. I don't want to get this video like any more trouble, because some of the stuff I think is pretty bad, and I don't want to, my audience, I feel like is relatively young. I don't know for sure if they're young. I don't know your ages, but he basically did a lot of horrible things that they found out, and you know what? He did a lot of bad stuff. But there are certain people that refuse to understand and read and learn. They're kind of just denying it, which I think is really disappointing. Andrew Tate, he should be locked up. We should have good people that are leading it, and the fact that he's that popular towards so many young people is kind of scary. I have friends who are big fans of Andrew Tate, and I think most of the time he says a lot of cool stuff. He says a lot of really, really true things, but then he also says a lot of horrible things that really I think is pretty despicable.
them these things, and eventually they adopt it as their own without fully understanding why themselves. As I have hinted, this practice and approach isn't just limited to the left and fascism. The Red Scare is the best example of this happening to the opposite side. But objectively, these whole fascist shenanigans are the most prominent and influential in the West. Even if we say that the people advocating them are in the minority, they still have a very clear and loud voice that makes it seem like they are everywhere and much stronger, which undoubtedly leads.
So they are in the minority. This is like 1%. The Antifa people, these crazy people, they just, the trans movement, they're just like 1%. 1%. And, at the best, maybe like 3. But it makes it look like they're everywhere. It makes it look like 90%. I mean, not like 90, but it makes it look like they're really, really out there. I've seen it so much. Like Walmart will support them and put up a lot of crazy things. And in San Francisco, government in California, LA, all those places, they're really gonna kind of bend the knee. And then even Texas has probably bent the knee a few times in like the big cities. We can't bend the knee. We kind of have to just form our own opinion, and if we agree, then we'll implement it. And if we know it's stupid, right, like the Antifa people, it's stupid, and we can get like the evidence of why we shouldn't be doing that, because burning down buildings is not going to do anything. So there's other better ways, and we create those new solutions by talking and debating instead of just trying to burn down stuff.
Leads to more people accepting their worldview. Even if for the vast majority of people this is nothing more than a stupid slander strategy, we have to understand that for the people advocating them, it is very much a truth that they accept, whether subconsciously or consciously. They live in this world where fascists are all around them at every corner, that they are about to take over and are going to become a threat to them personally. And even if we don't see the world as black and white as they do, it's honestly quite sad to see how they are being influenced to think this way, just as if they were in a cult. There are genuinely people among them who would put their life on the line to say that Trump is a fascist. To me, this is honestly just a depressing way to view the world and your surroundings, through these black and white lenses, that there is only fascism and anti-fascism. And for these people, I can feel nothing but pity. This video.
That's the end of the video. Hey, so what did I think of it? I liked it. I think he spoke a lot of true things. It is 100% true of a lot of the stuff he said. And I like how he's not being biased. He's not just saying it's only the left that did it. The right did it, and we can learn from that. Like, just great respect to him. Lavader, he's an amazing guy. And he understands a lot to do with debating, talking, and making good points, and kind of having a true type of democracy. Or in America, we should call it constitutional republic, because that's what we actually are, not democracy. But they did that. They pushed it, and now we call it democracy. It's constitutional republic, but it's a little more boring to say. That's why I'm gonna just call it the CR. We're a CR, not a democracy. Anyways, it's much more free in America. He has to deal with like a lot more bad stuff in Germany, because I believe he lives in Germany now. That I saw a lot more of the stuff he mentioned. And yeah, Germany has so many problems. But the fact that he's doing all this, and he's a really clever guy, and he brings his knowledge well. That's impressive. Best of luck to him. Also, respect. As a German American, I'm proud we have that many smart people. I'll end the video now. It's too long already. I'll see you later. Goodbye.